In this podcast episode, Joe Rogan sits down with comedian Ari Shaffir to discuss a vast range of topics, including Ari's life experiences, psychedelic drugs, political commentary, underground culture, and their shared love of comedy. The conversation weaves through Ari's extended travels in South America, psychedelic experiences, the state of cannabis legalization, heavyweight combat sports, ancient civilizations, and the evolving comedy landscape. Throughout the episode, Ari shares stories from his personal life and career, offering insight into his thoughts on societal issues and the challenges within the entertainment industry. Ari Shaffir recounts spending 6 to 7 months away from the traditional daily grind, traveling extensively throughout South America and parts of Asia. He explains that although he was partly involved in podcasting remotely, this period was largely about disconnecting from regular life and immersing himself in different cultures. While in Ecuador, for example, he participated in a podcast that involved watching the movie 21 Jump Street to pass time during the pandemic, highlighting the boredom and creative ways they kept entertained across distances. Ari emphasizes how traveling helped rejuvenate his creativity and mental space, allowing him to come back refreshed and inspired to create content. Ari delves deeply into his experiences with psychedelics, particularly mushrooms and ayahuasca. He discusses how psychedelics have dramatically shifted his worldview, especially in terms of self-awareness and empathy. The conversation touches on the ritualistic nature of drinking yerba mate in South America, despite Ari's frank opinion that it tastes like hay. They explore the complexities surrounding the legalization and medical acceptance of psychedelics like psilocybin and MDMA, noting the slow progress in policy despite promising clinical studies, especially those helping veterans cope with PTSD. They discuss the societal resistance to drug reform, particularly the political risk elected officials face when endorsing such measures. Ari references the Texas Ebogani Initiative as a rare example of state-level investment in psychedelic medicine with bipartisan support. There's also a candid discussion on the differing effects and risks of cannabis, including its stronger modern versions versus older Mexican weed varieties with lower THC content, and the potential dangers for individuals predisposed to schizophrenia. Ari and Joe touch on the evolving legal status of marijuana and cannabis edibles in the U.S. and abroad. The unregulated nature of early cannabis products led to inconsistent and sometimes overwhelming potency, such as with edibles that contained unpredictable doses labeled with variable X factors. Stories of overconsumption and unexpected highs reveal cultural shifts in how cannabis is consumed and perceived. Ari candidly shares his personal experiences with drugs on production sets, including 2 powerful edibles and THC pills. The discussion expands into the realm of cannabis's acceptance by professional sports leagues, especially basketball, where many athletes report improved performance and focus when using it. They touch on how cannabis testing policies have adapted to this cultural acceptance. Using personal anecdotes, Ari recounts meetings with certain strange or dangerous individuals he's encountered, including a jiu-jitsu competitor later revealed to be a wanted criminal. Under the influence of psychedelics or other drugs, he felt keenly attuned to people's energies and true selves, a theme he refers to repeatedly, how substances can reveal hidden layers of personalities as well as the soul of people. This segues into reflections on social behavior, energy, and even a broad observation about cultural differences in public conduct across the world. The conversation shifts into geopolitical territory, with discussion about U.S. foreign policy, the war on terror, and the dynamics between the U.S. and Middle Eastern countries. Ari explores the concept that terrorism and U.S. military dominance are in some ways symbiotic, each fueling the other to justify military spending and influence. They reflect on recent events in Afghanistan, noting the chaotic U.S. withdrawal and the quick takeover by the Taliban, questioning decisions around equipment abandonment and the realistic role the Taliban plays as a governing body. The discussion broadens to compare other forms of power consolidation, such as the pharmaceutical industry's role in the opioid crisis, and the parallels to how cartels and corporations operate with devastating impacts. Joe and Ari touch on technological and industrial history, notably the infamous Ford Pinto case, where the company knowingly overlooked a design flaw that led to fatal accidents because it was cheaper than fixing the issue. They connect this to broader corporate malfeasance, including allegations against companies like Coca-Cola and Dole over human rights violations abroad. They also discuss the decline of the American auto industry due to the outsourcing of manufacturing jobs to countries with lower labor costs, highlighting the social impacts on places like Detroit and Flint, Michigan. This leads to a side conversation about pizza culture in the U.S., uniquely incorporating commentary on shapes, regional styles, and the influence of personalities like food reviewer Dave Portnoy. The podcast hosts discuss mixed martial arts, MMA, boxing, and combat sports in general, focusing on the controversial practice of weight cutting. They agree that the current system unfairly favors fighters who are better at dehydrating themselves to make weight rather than actual competitiveness. Joe mentions conversations with UFC executive Hunter Campbell about radically reforming the weight class system to eliminate cutting, while Ari shares his own background in wrestling, voicing concern over the disproportionate physical toll that cutting weight takes, especially on female athletes. They contrast the UFC's limited number of weight classes with boxing's much larger array, noting that better weight division segmentation could improve the sport. The conversation also touches on niche combat sports like bare-knuckle boxing and chess boxing, the latter of which they regard as somewhat absurd due to the contradictory demands of mental acuity and physical combat. A significant portion of the episode is devoted to billiards, pool, and cue sports globally, including different regional styles such as three-cushion billiards and snooker. They discuss the passionate culture around pool halls in the Bronx and Latin America, where gambling is intense and distractions abundant. Ari shares stories of top professionals losing matches due to outside chaos and crowd pressure. The conversation extends to poker, including references to classic poker literature and racialized tells from a bygone era. They talk about the crossover between mental acuity in games like chess and poker and the nuances of competitive mindset and betting psychology. Joe and Ari dive into intriguing archaeological topics, including long-forgotten underground cities in Turkey found after local farmers discovered tunnels by accident. They discuss mysterious caves in China with no historical record of their creators, and expansive ancient structures in South America like Machu Picchu and Nazca lines that defy easy explanation. They explore the idea of lost civilizations that built precise megalithic structures, pondering what might have happened to them, and the possibility of unknown human variants evidenced by elongated skulls found in some places. The conversation reflects on the gaps in historical knowledge about these sites and the enduring mysteries of human history. Returning to lighter topics, Ari reflects on his career as a comedian and podcaster. He talks about founding and running the show This Is Not Happening, his battles with network gatekeepers, and the freedom found in creating independent content. Ari details his strategy of batching podcast episodes while traveling and the benefits of producing evergreen content free of corporate constraints. They discuss the rise of platforms like Tom Segura's Arena, which funds and distributes alternative comedy content without censorship, contrasting this with traditional networks like Comedy Central that stifled innovation. Ari touches on the value of authentic storytelling in comedy and the importance of diversity in lived experiences rather than superficial quota-based approaches. Throughout the episode, Ari shares frank and humorous reflections on lifestyle habits, such as struggles with gluttony, overeating, and drinking. He also talks candidly about family, including plans to have his Holocaust survivor father appear on his podcast to share his remarkable life story. The hosts acknowledge the complexity of current social and political climates, especially regarding the conflation of Jewish identity with Israeli government policies and the rise of Holocaust denial online. This leads to broader conversations on societal polarization, the complexity of Middle Eastern conflicts, and the challenge of separating deeply ingrained tribal loyalties from humanity and empathy. Joe and Ari discuss the therapeutic benefits of nature and green spaces, referencing scientific research showing the calming effect of bird songs and natural environments on mental health. They mourn the ongoing threats to urban parks, discussing local New York community efforts to save spaces like the Elizabeth Street Gardens from development. For both, access to nature equates to improved mental clarity, creativity, and relaxation. The hosts examine cultural patterns and social behaviors they have observed around the world, including norms around speakerphone use in different communities and urban noise levels. They humorously analyze stereotypes with an emphasis on observation rather than judgment, noting how different cultural environments condition what is considered normal or polite behavior. Toward the end, Ari shares his philosophy of focusing on one's craft rather than chasing trends or social media metrics, encouraging comedians and creators to develop their unique voices free of external pressures to conform to popular formats like short clips. They celebrate the joy of creating genuine and original comedy, regardless of how long it may take to gain widespread recognition. Citing examples like Big J. Okerson's long-form crowd work as an example of successful authenticity, Ari outlines his efficient podcast production methods, explaining how he recorded multiple episodes in advance while traveling, making use of mobile technology to capture high-quality video and audio content. He talks about the changes in podcast advertising and content restrictions over time, as platforms tighten control over music and copyrighted content. The episode closes with a reflection on the shifting media landscape, where creators have more freedom and resources to produce high-quality programming outside traditional network gatekeepers, as exemplified by projects like This Is Not Happening, rebooted through new independent channels.